Overwhelmed with online?
Or just wanting to learn more about how you can build a successful business amidst all the buzzwords and empty promises?
The Breaking Online podcast takes the boring out of digital and social media
And puts it back into accounting and making sandwiches where it belongs.
Breaking Online is what smart entrepreneurs need to escape the clutter, get clear of the confusion, and pass the bullshit of building and growing a successful business online. Now, here's your host and author of the book on digital strategy and online marketing, The Digital Delusion, Doyle Buehler.
Hello and welcome to Breaking Digital, the podcast for entrepreneurs wanting to become true digital leaders in their industry and to own online, as I call it. Hello, I'm Doyle Buehler, and I'm so excited to be bringing you a special guest today. I'm looking forward to helping you learn more about what you can be doing online and how you can be doing it better. And if you have any comments throughout the program, please feel free to connect on Twitter at Doyle Buehler with hashtag #OwnOnline. And you can also find the resources that we talk about as well as the podcast for download on www.thedigitaldelusion.com/podcast. All right, let's get started. So I'd like to introduce to you David Hobson from Melbourne, who's actually a phenomenal expert in LinkedIn and sales funnels and everything else. So welcome to the program, David. How are you going today?
Doing great, Doyle. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no worries. As I was saying, can you give just a quick rundown of sort of some of the remarkable projects you've been working on?
Sure. So look, I've been playing around online for a little while, a little bit like yourself. Most recently, I've been really heavily focusing on LinkedIn to kind of underpin a lot of business development, a lot of lead generation and sales, working with kind of small business owners and entrepreneurs specifically. So I really love that intersection where technology, marketing, psychology hits to kind of get real results for small business owners, as opposed to, look, awareness is great online, but a lot of the people I work with, they just need some really tangible results.
Well, that's the thing too, is that a lot of it, like, can you maybe just go into sort of what do you mean by real results? Because a lot of the stuff that we do online, unfortunately, seems to be fluff, right? So how do you define being real and being authentic online?
Yeah. So in terms of real results, I would regard that as an action that, you know, your target market or someone's target market or customer would take. So that might be something like you're running a workshop and you need 10 or 20 people there. So I would regard a real result as being able to find people online and then fill a literal room with people and take them through a workshop. So that might be one action or outcome that's very, very tangible. Another one would be sales. So bottom line, selling your product online or even offline. And I guess the other one would be probably getting meetings and appointments. Just something that takes the interaction offline, I would regard as a real result.
So it's not all about online then, is what you're saying?
Yes, yeah, I'll go with that. I think it has to come offline at some stage, whether that's dollars in your bank account or bums on seats.
And do you feel that there's a lot of people that might be missing out on that?
Definitely. I think so many people, and I love what you're doing because you're really tackling that confusion. It's very hard for people to know what to do. There's so much information, and branding and awareness online and spread, it's so important. But if you just focus on the fans, the friends, and the connections, you really miss out on you know, some of the core reasons you're actually in business.
Yeah, and that can be a challenge because as you know, I mean, being on LinkedIn even, for example, I mean, there's so much so many people and so much coming through the feed and so many requests, and you're just trying to manage it and sort of deal with your own stuff. And, you know, what do you do, David, that helps kind of get through some of that clutter and confusion?
Yeah, really good question. So one of the things you and I have actually talked about a little bit offline, and I'll bring up here, is I sometimes run some campaigns that actually tie in with my LinkedIn account. So the first thing really is, when I'm doing something on LinkedIn, it's about interacting with people and real people. So seeing someone as a connection or a comment or something, you're dealing with real people who are busy, who are at their computer, they're on their phone, their tablet, whatever. And if you want them to take some sort of an action with you, you need a compelling reason. And often you actually kind of need to recruit a little bit of support. So a really easy example would be something like, asking for a recommendation on LinkedIn. Often I'll get asked for recommendations. I'm sure you probably do as well. And they're not very compelling. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, in terms of how I would do that as a campaign, just shooting someone a very templated recommendation request, it's very cold, it's very impersonal, it's not likely to get a great result.
And what do you get from a recommendation for those listeners that are just kind of getting into LinkedIn?
Cool. So sorry, looping back on that, recommendations on your LinkedIn profile are really, really important. The main thing you get is social proof and credibility, because it's the one thing that you did not write on your profile. And even better, they actually link back to the person who's making that recommendation. So it's almost like a testimonial, but it's verifiable. So if you gave me a recommendation, people could click through on it, go through and see who you are and check that it's actually a real testimonial.
Yeah. Okay. So can your mom make a recommendation? Is that a good idea?
It depends. It depends what your business is.
Okay.
But there's definitely space for it is good to start building with friends. Sometimes to kind of get the lower hanging fruit, for just to get the ball rolling, get some comments up there.
So target your friends and then potential customers or clients, or, well, I guess it wouldn't be potential customers, but existing clients that you've worked with. Is that a good idea?
Absolutely. So the most powerful recommendations you can have as an online business owner would be from your clients.
Okay.
Really, really powerful social proof for other people who are thinking about doing business with you is a customer testimonial. But apart from that, you can also get people you've worked with, industry colleagues and peers, and then friends. It's kind of like back in the resume days where you'd get sort of a personal referee and you'd have a professional referee. They both work on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Okay. And I know sometimes it's a little bit, there's a lot of things that you're asking for a recommendation. How do you really simplify it so they just kind of go, yeah, okay, no problem type thing? Should I create a template that says, hey, here's a start? What are some of the things that you do to get good recommendations that are easy for the person's doing it for you?
Yeah, great question. Because whenever you're asking someone for something like this, everybody's busy, and you always need to provide a compelling reason for someone to do something. Everybody generally has good intentions, wants to help you, but obviously they have things that are urgent and important.
Well, they've got their own business, right?
Yeah. So your request might slip right down to the bottom of the pile.
Yeah.
So I do a few different things, but whenever I ask someone for something, whether it's a recommendation or anything else, I try to have a good balance in that relationship. So if I'm asking them for a recommendation, then I'll offer to make one for them. That's a very, very strong, simple hook, because everybody's looking for this. So it's a very good way to lead by, you're asking for something, but you're also giving something in return.
Yeah.
And definitely with that, like you said, I would have a template to go off and give people something. You want to make it as easy as possible, because if you tell someone to write a recommendation and they come back and saying, what would you like me to write?
Yeah.
You're just wasting time. So I've got some templates, but I would just have something very simple saying, can you please do this? I'll do one for you. Here's an example, and here's a template you can use, and just make it as easy as possible as you can for them.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent advice. All right. What else would you do for our online or LinkedIn? Let's get specific.
In what aspect of LinkedIn? It's just a beast. There's just so many things that you can do on LinkedIn. What area do you want to dive into?
Well, how do you make money online with LinkedIn, or can you? Let's be blunt here. Can you make money with LinkedIn, or can you, maybe not as people buying something from you on LinkedIn, but how do you lead people along that path to eventually become customers?
Well,
because you've created some, and maybe I can get into that now, but you've created some amazing funnels, sales and lead funnels that have been just doing absolutely remarkable work. Like, what do you recommend?
Okay, so can you kind of get money and customers through LinkedIn? Definitely. In terms of thinking of it as a platform, its biggest strength is as a business to business, a B2B platform, as opposed to business direct to customer. So whereas you'll have a lot more of experience than I do with something like Facebook, but Facebook ads might be great for doing business to customer. Whereas LinkedIn really shines as business to business. So service providers working with other service providers.
Yeah.
And you can definitely get some really strong results, because LinkedIn, there's a quote from a guy called Ken Krogh at Inside Sales. And he says something like LinkedIn may be the best source of sales intelligence on the planet. And I really agree with him on that, because LinkedIn is this incredible database. It's this incredibly rich database of business profiles and business information. So I really see business as solving problems. You're not just trying to sell something, you make money by solving other people's problems. And the better you understand your audience and your target market and their problems, the easier it is for you to come in and solve that. First of all, to find them, and then to solve that problem for them. So LinkedIn is this very, very rich database. They're now close to 320 million users. And every time you get a first connection on LinkedIn, you actually get that stored in a database. So you actually are building an email database out at the same time, which is incredibly, incredibly powerful. So you can definitely make money, but it always comes back to B2B is going to shine the best on LinkedIn. It's very, very powerful for finding joint venture partners and strategic alliances, and also getting very rich information about people you'd like to do business with. And then the next step, as you mentioned, it's really around setting up a funnel and taking people through a process of not knowing who you are through to some sort of action or doing some kind of business with you, whether that's a meeting or an event, or you alluded to a few of the things I've done. Some of the campaigns have involved, events. Put together around 50 joint venture partnerships in around 10 weeks, just sourcing leads off LinkedIn. And that kind of process would go around, first of all, finding people on LinkedIn with very detailed search features. I'd work with a virtual assistant to message people for me on my behalf, and then build that into a funnel of steps until I'd have a phone call with them and onboard them as a partner.
And can you give us an example of one of the campaigns that you felt worked quite well without giving any names or disclosing any private details?
Yeah, look, there are two examples, and I'll give quite different examples just to help some of the audience. Again, strategic alliances, joint venture partnerships, very, very powerful, because you're approaching people with a very non-threatening message. You want to work with them and do business together, and it's ideally a win-win and mutually beneficial. So you've already got a very strong value proposition to approach people with. So I think, using LinkedIn's advanced search features, if you can define your ideal strategic partner, so that might just be someone who, when we think of strategic partners, it might be the kind of business that, your target market would either use before or after your service. So for someone like myself, I work really well with photographers, because they're always encountering people who are getting their photo done for a LinkedIn profile or a social media account.
Yeah.
And in return, I'm always working with people with horrible photos who need a photographer. So that's a really great kind of partner for me to find. So if I can run a detailed search on LinkedIn that shows me a whole lot of suitable photographers, I can then go through and start contacting them and building relationships with them so that they're sending me customers.
I see. Okay. Do you just a question about your research? Are you like have a professional account, like a paid account, or do you get the access that you need with sort of a general account? What's been your experience with that?
Good question. Well, my advice to people would be take the free account absolutely as far as you can until you start hitting the little things that say, oh, do you need this upgrade? So personally, I use a full sales account. I've also got the Sales Navigator kind of sales team, additional premium account.
Yep.
But most people, a pretty basic sales account will allow you to get the searches you need. The only issue is when you're running this kind of a funnel is you'll get limited to the number of searches that you can do. So you'll probably hit a wall where you'll ideally want to upgrade to maybe $20 a month. But in terms of ROI, I mean, how many sales do you have to get to justify $20 or $30 a month?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That makes sense. But it's just sort of, there must be different levels of profiles then in terms of the pro accounts, the sales accounts, that sort of thing. Because typically they're in the $80 to $100 range a month.
Look, they've been building out a lot more of their kind of accounts and potential subscriptions. There's actually a few options that are, if you do a bit of digging, you can find for much more affordable accounts. So
some secret accounts. Tell us more.
I'll have to look up the exact little hack, but it doesn't come up initially. Like you said, when you kind of hit a wall and it says, "Hey, would you like to upgrade?"
Yeah.
It'll start presenting things that are $50 a month or $70 a month. But if you play around with some of the options and hunt back through, there are some that can get down to, as long as they're still running, even $14.95 a month.
Really?
So,
wow.
And even for good sales options, there's some around $19 and $29. It's just tweaking it. Probably to the, what's Tim Ferriss say, the minimum effective dose. You know, so upgrade as far as you need, but not above.
Yeah, no, excellent. So continue with sort of developing that funnel.
Yeah, so there's obviously a point where when you're developing a funnel like this, a really key element is to have a profile that's very strong and very congruent with your sales messaging. So a really simple example would be, I'll stick with photographer, for example. If I'm approaching photographers saying, I'm a LinkedIn trainer, I work with small businesses and sales teams, but they go to my profile and I'm showing up as an exotic male dancer for for men down under.
From a previous career.
Massive disconnect.
Oh, I thought I recognized you.
yeah, it's true. But it's funny because a lot of people wear a lot of different hats, and their profile, it comes across as a bit...
or a different thong in your case.
Exactly, different thong. It comes across as a bit confusing. So you want to be really congruent that... Now, going back to a resume example, remember the days of resumes when you would apply for a different job, you would customize your resume to suit the job, and you'd shuffle things around. And if you were saying that you were a manager, you would start by saying, "Here's all my experience as a manager." When you're running one of these funnels, what happens? It's basically what I call the profile loop. The second someone gets a message from you, if they don't really know who you are, the first thought is, "Who is this person? Who is this clown?" And they're either, if you've got a good headline and a compelling message, that's your first step. But the next thing they're going to do is check out your profile. So you need a really strong profile that's very, very congruent with the messaging that you've just sent them. So the second they land on your profile page, you're ticking all the mental boxes, all of the influence, all the psychology that makes them want to do business with you. So it's a really important part of the funnel.
Okay. And you mentioned some mental... boxes, like what ones are you referring to in this case?
Well, I think social proof, trust, and credibility are very, very important. Mm-hmm. So that's where, again, those recommendations come in. Having a lot of rich media that shows who you are and what your business is like. If they hit a very dry profile that doesn't tell them much about you, we know everyone's busy. I think there's something like, the span of a goldfish is 8 seconds, and we've got a span of about 7 seconds. So people aren't going to...
Or 4 in my case. What's your name again? Sorry. Oh, my God.
Well, and that's the thing. I think it comes back to how would we respond. And, everyone's busy. You look at something, you don't know them. You're going to give them a quick bit of your attention, and it has to be grabbed. Mm-hmm. And if they waste that on a very dry profile that doesn't build trust or credibility or authority or social proof, you're just going to move on. But I think things like having rich media that shows who you are, your business, testimonials, something that very quickly mentally, all they do is they look at it, and within the first 3 seconds, they're thinking, professional, credible, trustworthy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay. And what's next then?
So what's next is in your original message, you'll have some sort of proposition with them. You want to keep it really, really small. So, for example, if I was contacting you, I'd have a really simple first step that I'd like for you to take with me. So I would basically be like, "Hey, Doyle, love what you're doing online." And my first step might be, we might do a Skype, we might have a phone call, it might be a coffee meeting, but I'll propose whatever that first step is, or it might be simply just to check out my profile and see if you're interested. So the first step is really to start building towards that offline connection. So ideally, I would send you a message saying, "Looks like we're working with a lot of the same people. I've got a great database of engaged people who need help on social media. Would you like to have a quick chat, 5 minutes, and we should be able to figure out if there's any room to work together." Mm-hmm. I'll then put in a PS. If you want to find out who I am, what I do, here's a link to my profile. You'll click on my profile, be thoroughly impressed, come back and think, "This is great. What have I got to lose?" and we'll schedule up a very quick phone call, which then takes into a sales process or a partnership process.
Okay. And does that work for all like different cities than the one you're in as well? Like say you wanted to grow the business in Brisbane or Sydney or wherever, like how would you use the same steps?
Absolutely. So, as you mentioned, I'm based in Melbourne. I actually had to work with an events company, and it was an event that was happening out of Brisbane. And I had never been to Brisbane at the time. I had no network, no connections. And that's where we managed to, we had an event with sort of over 700 tickets sold to an event purely and primarily built off LinkedIn.
Oh, excellent. Wow.
So it's just about having a good value proposition and solving problems for people, and we've got such great access with the internet and online to kind of find those people. And as long as you're authentic and solving a problem, the sky's the limit, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, definitely. Okay, cool. What is one of your biggest accomplishments online? What do you consider the one that sort of the showcase that, hey, if somebody wants to know how to do this, this is what I've done?
It's a good question. Look, I think there's a few different things that I'm really enjoying what I'm doing with LinkedIn at the moment. I've got it on autopilot now to build around 1,000 connections a month without having to touch it, and that's quality connections. So that's not adding in spammers and idiots or anything like that. That's working with a few different systems I've put in place and a VA. So in terms of building a database and building connections, I've been really enjoying that.
Yeah.
And probably in the past, a few other things I've been happy with are some launches I've done that did sort of probably more monetary value, where did an email launch that netted $300,000 in 3 days, another one that did $200,000 in 2 days, and that's where I really kind of got. Obviously, that wasn't all money I was making. I was behind the marketing, but that's where I really got hooked on the power of online.
Yeah. Okay. And you'll have to let us in on some of those secrets then. How did you actually do that? Because there's these mystical beasts online, right? It's like, I just turned this thing on, and next thing I know, I checked my PayPal account, and it was like, oh my God, I'm rich. Now I'm going to go buy a car and get some bling.
The overnight success that actually took 5 years to build.
Yeah, well, there you go. Okay, so how did you get there?
So the big money ones, I've actually signed NDAs. I can't talk too much about.
Yeah, look, no details. That's fine. Just curious of the steps or the process.
Yeah, so that one was basically working with people and helping them to build a very big list and then engaging with their email list. So to run a promotion for them. So I can't say too much about it, but it basically was email marketing. So having a large list, running a sequence, a campaign over 12 weeks that got people very, very excited about a product launch, then launching it with a very limited time window, and just netted a lot of sales in a short period of time.
Excellent. And was that recent, or was that like a couple of years ago?
This is kind of glory days of when you could do that with PDFs. This is probably about 6 years ago now.
Okay.
So really when internet marketing was kind of having its heyday, and the whole PDF was a very expensive commodity.
Yeah. Okay. And you also created like an infographic I remember this one about a year ago. What was that one about? Because it was quite intriguing. And how did you go about preparing that?
Okay, so I was this is really funny. Like a lot of things, it had kind of silly beginnings. I was mouthing off a lot about something. There was a competition online to see who could get the biggest number of social shares.
Oh, okay.
And I was sort of saying, well, of course I can beat that, and I'm a genius, and I can do anything.
Mr. Smarty Pants.
Yeah. But as anyone knows who's got out there, once you actually stop talking and start doing, things get a lot harder. So the way I wanted to create something really shareable was infographics. Everyone's talking about it, and they're supposed to be one of the, at the time, a very hot shareable thing. So I tied it in with the launch. Actually, it was based on 50 Cent. Tied it in with the launch of his new CD, and really put together a campaign around it. So this is kind of tying into what you're asking. When you go to share something online, you can't just have hope marketing where you just drop something on Facebook or LinkedIn and hope that everyone's going to be so amazed and excited that it just spreads like wildfire.
Yeah.
That would be great, and
So
it does happen some of the time.
Would you call it anti-hope marketing is the best kind, or?
I think, what would I call it? I think
Actually doing it, getting
Yeah.
shit done, right?
Getting it done and building momentum. So you want to really get that snowball rolling. People will get on board once something's moving and spreading. And again, social proof's another big factor. If everyone sees something else is popular, they'll get on board. But getting that initial bit of traction, it requires, things don't happen online. People think you just put something up and magically all these little likes and comments and things happen. And it can, but the best way to do it is to get it started. And the way I did that was actually running a little mini email campaign behind that infographic. So I did it in stages, and I launched it to just a small private list of friends and colleagues and connections, and just got them to do what's known as a leaderboard strategy, which is basically where, if you think of something like the iTunes store or YouTube, if people see something and they all start liking and commenting on it at the same time, it's going to go through all the internal algorithms and start showing up as trending or popular, because all of a sudden it's gone from 0 to 100 likes in 15 minutes. So if you can really smash a time frame where you get a huge number of actions, it's going to increase the virality and spread of something. So I was trying to manufacture that by getting everybody ready to basically click and share on it at the exact same time.
Okay.
Which we actually managed to get a few people on board with that. We had some good shares from different people involved in the project. It got around 10,000 shares in about a week and a half.
Yeah, excellent.
Which I was happy with, but again,
Yeah.
I took a huge number of lessons and things that I'll do differently in the future, and I thought it was going to do a heck of a lot more, and I kind of got put in my place for mouthing off. But not a bad result, but you always learn once you actually get out and
So we're in the learning podcast here. So what did you learn from it, and what would you do differently for next time?
Okay, so there's a few things.
Besides mouthing off, I guess.
Yeah. Now, one of the strategies that I had was for this infographic. It was how to hustle like 50 Cent.
Yeah.
It had 5 kind of specific steps around things that he's done in his career, and we had a resource for entrepreneurs, and we had we had Seth Godin, and we had Eric Ries, and we had specific tools that people could then go and use. And I asked them to get involved, but I had the sequence wrong. So what I did was I selected what I genuinely thought were 5 brilliant online free resources that people should use. We put them into the infographic, and then we said to these guys, hey, we're putting out this infographic. Can you send it out to your list? Can you retweet it? Can you share it? And the problem with that was there was no hook for them to get involved. I got an email back from Seth Godin saying that's really nice. I got 1 or 2 retweets, but they weren't really on board, because I'd basically I'd given them an infographic that would cost, it was with a top designer. I collaborated with him, so I didn't pay the cost, but it was around a $1,500 infographic that I basically gave them for free.
Yeah.
So the sequence was wrong, where I said, hey, I've done this, can you help me? Whereas in reverse, I would approach people and I'd have a much bigger funnel of top experts and say something like, hey, Doyle, I love your stuff. I'd like to feature you in this infographic, and I will, if I can have a commitment that at this time and this date, you're going to email your list, you're going to tweet it, and you're going to Facebook it, and help me to drive it out there, because your success will be my success.
Yeah. Well, I guess a lot of it comes down to, confidence and credibility too, right? Because online is pretty darn big. And when you're approaching somebody like Seth Godin, it's like, well, I should probably have something to at least to show him. So I understand your thought process at the beginning. Do you think you would have gotten a better response if you would have said it the other way, though? Because I'm almost thinking because look, let's be honest, nobody knows us. We're just doing our own thing.
We're just some dudes.
Just some dudes on the beach, on the internet. Because if we were to show them something, it's like then they can sort of buy into that. So I don't know.
Yeah, look, I agree. Obviously, something like Seth Godin's really, really reaching and unlikely, that he's going to go, oh, hey, unknown guy, I'd love to help you prove a point. But interestingly, when I was reaching out to people afterwards, I don't know, I've been emailing back and forth with a guy called Lewis Howes. Do you know Lewis Howes?
Yeah, he does. Actually, yeah, he's got a really good website. He's sort of like a personal coach type thing.
Yeah, lifestyle
Lifestyle
entrepreneur.
coach, yeah, entrepreneur, yeah, yeah.
Massive online following,
Yeah.
and I was going back and forth with him on email about it, and he said, "Why didn't you include me?"
Oh.
So there were some really missed opportunities where I think by starting, yeah, look, it's probably better to have these big wide funnels. You shoot for the top, you ask your Seth Godins, you ask all these people,
Yeah.
and then you definitely have to have something to show them. Here's what it's going to look like. Here's what we expect to happen. But I think if I just changed the sequence a little bit, I would have got a much stronger result because those two. Look, I was doing it based on goodwill in the sense that I thought these are just genuinely from my heart great resources that I think if people got online and used, it would help them. And I wanted that to somehow generate this sharing, but the psychology and the strategy just wasn't there to back it up.
Okay. Can we include the infographic on the resources page for this podcast?
Yeah, let's do it. It's still up there, still chugging away.
Okay, cool. And what was the ultimate goal of that campaign? Was it just to sort of say, hey, I've done it, or could you monetize it? Was it getting the contacts? At least now they know who you are, kind of thing.
Yeah, so it really was a test. It really was. I just wanted to test shareability online and see if I could manufacture like what's the most shares I can do with something. And again, how would you do it if you had to get a lot of shares? If you want your work to spread to 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 people,
Yeah.
can you do it with an infographic? And had some really strong results. It's definitely for certain kinds of audiences. I would highly recommend it. It's very shareable. I don't think anyone would sneeze at having a few thousand shares or getting their work out in front of a few thousand people. So it was definitely a test to just kind of get out there again. Just I'd had a few years out of online marketing after I'd done some of those big launches, working with small businesses. So it was really kind of getting out there, putting my name on something, and just it's very interesting though because I still do get people who recognize me from that, and that's built trust and credibility with them.
Oh, excellent. Cool. So what haven't you tried online?
What haven't I tried online?
Yeah.
I am not on Facebook.
What? Oh my God. No, you're kidding me.
I resisted from the very beginning, and it just became this thing that I just sort of stubbornly refused to get involved
No.
in.
Facebook kicked you off, right? Come on, nobody does that anymore.
Yeah, so no, Facebook's something I haven't done, and I'm actually I don't know. I might not know what I'm missing, but I'm quite happy that I've got that extra brain space freed up not to be looking at what some guy I went to school with is doing on his holidays.
Yeah. Well, LinkedIn's kind of getting like that too, though, right? Yeah.
I think luckily it is regarded as a professional network, and if you're careful with who you connect with, they say their aim is to provide industry insights and information, and so in terms of list building, I think it's crazy. I mean, I've built a list of I've got 10,000 connections as a list building strategy. I think it's fairly solid as well.
10,000. I was going to ask you how many.
Yeah, look, I just ticked over 10,000 recently, but it depends on what I'm trying to do, what connection strategy I'm running, and why. It's not just about numbers. It's definitely got to be about quality.
Yeah.
So I've been playing around with different ways of connecting with good people through LinkedIn.
And how do you maintain those relationships?
Yeah, so in terms of maintaining, I think the studies are that you can't actually actively maintain a personal network with any sort of depth over, I think it's 150. I think in terms of human psychology, you can't really manage more than 150 proper personal relationships.
Right.
So for me, that's just a place where I can, once they're a first connection, I can then engage with them. So I maintain by just posting updates and different things at different times, but it's more where I now have the ability to interact and network with a huge number of business owners.
Would you contact them with like a direct LinkedIn email kind of thing, or just sort of updates?
Look, I'll always post updates and played around with the publishing platform as well. But depending on what's happening, I would definitely contact them with a LinkedIn message if I think it's relevant. There's a very fine line, or actually there's not a fine line, but you've got to be careful that when you approach people, they want to hear from you, and you've got something that can help them, and you're not just straight up spamming them.
Yeah, or do your research as well, right? Because I don't know about you, but you probably get quite a lot of requests too, or emails that are really not even related to what you do. And I'm not talking about, I want to own, or I want your relative has died and we want to get your banking information, kind of thing, which, I'm surprised it took them that long to get to LinkedIn, but hey, they're still there. So
Yeah, and I'm starting to see a few of those, but my thing is really around authentic, integral business, and if you're solving a problem. So I was talking about photographers earlier. In my early days on LinkedIn, when I just hadn't bothered to fix up my profile photo, I got approached by a photographer who basically said, "Hey, I can see that you're a manager at this company, but your profile doesn't reflect that. I'm a photographer. I've got some packages. Do you want to have a talk?" And that to me in no way was spam. And she's now actually the lady who's done all of my profile photos, done a fantastic job. But that's the difference between spam and solving a problem. One was a need. She spoke to it. She helped me. She provided a way very quickly, and I was very, very happy to hear from her.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's cool. What projects do you have coming up? If you can tell us, that is.
Okay, so in terms of LinkedIn, I'm still doing a lot of behind-the-scenes training with sort of national sales teams and CEOs, just getting them up to speed on the best practice of using LinkedIn. But I've got something in the pipeline. It's coming up later on in March. I'm working with, I think a guy called James Tuckerman.
Yes, yep.
Digital marketer and does all sorts of things. Just around
a phenomenal digital marketer, I might add.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed working with him. He's an absolute freak in the best sense of the business word. But we've got something in the pipeline coming up where I'm trying to look at how I can bring across my learnings and some of the crazy strategies I've got around LinkedIn, so that other people can get the same sorts of results without I don't think I mentioned on this call, I've been banned 5 times on LinkedIn.
Yeah, tell us about that. How do you get banned? Come on.
Well, yeah, that's why I know the difference between spam and solving a problem. I approached LinkedIn really aggressively initially and just tried everything I could think of, and I just did ridiculous stuff. I tried some ingenious things and I tried some really stupid things. So you get banned by breaking their rules, which include things like approaching too many people who say, "I don't know this guy."
Yeah.
By messaging too many people who say, "This is spam." By doing things like one time I decided to upload a list of 2,000 media contacts at a time and just see what would happen. At which point I had to immediately backpedal. But I really pushed the limits to find out what was possible on LinkedIn, and now that I kind of know where it is, I've had to actually, quite seriously, I've had to sign agreements with them that I'm not going to break their terms and conditions. So now I'm very careful. But
did you have to create a new profile, or they just you had a sort of a cooling off period type thing?
Bit of a cooling off period, and it's a horrible feeling when you're relying on LinkedIn as a source of leads and profile and business development. When you go to your account and log in and it just doesn't work.
Oh, jeez.
And I was getting emails saying, "Hey, you sent me this thing about a meeting, but I can't find your profile. What's going on?"
Oh, goodness.
And it's not a good feeling. So, I sort of want to make sure that other people can get great results, but without having to make the blunders that I did.
Yeah, well, thanks for being brave.
Brave, stupid, sometimes the same thing.
Yeah, well, I've gotten a few warnings from LinkedIn. They never actually banned. But yeah, anyway.
It's good to find the limits.
You got to push the limits sometimes. So,
yeah, absolutely.
With that in mind, like if you could fix anything about business online, what do you think that would be for you, anyways? Like what's not working, and what would you try to fix about online in general or LinkedIn specifically that you find doesn't work?
Really good question. I think it's something around real interactions. I think we are getting this void where people, it does become about the numbers, and people are, here's me going, "Oh, I've got 10,000 connections," but each of those connections is a real person. I think I think there's something to be said about real connection and real business relationships, which is why I like to take them offline. So I think if people focused, I'd like for people to focus more on the quality of their relationships. 10 raving fans is better than 1,000 likes. Um, I think it's that real interaction and real connection. And I love a lot of the lean startup sort of stuff and what people are doing around, getting really good customer feedback and really iterating as they go along. I think that's a really great thing that's coming out, and there's a lot of plugins and a lot of very good pieces of software. But I think I'd like to see more real connections than just sort of everyone sitting behind their computers feeling stressed and disconnected.
Yeah, no, definitely good advice. So in terms of my next question, and I was gonna sort of include Facebook, but I think I'll have to exclude it now. But my favorite question is if you were the CEO of Google, or Facebook or LinkedIn, take your pick of sort of the digital giants out there, what is the first thing that you would do?
The first thing that I would do.
Besides, sit in the chair, put your feet up on the desk and say, "Hey, Jane, get me my coffee."
Poor Jane. What would I do? Look, I think I'm a pretty altruistic guy. I would really like to do something shamelessly altruistic and awesome to inspire other people. So I would probably love to do something ridiculous around a chunk of money to some good causes, that not just in a way that boosts us, but in a way that actually engages everybody. Because when you look at the latest statistics on 1% of the population own 99% of the wealth or things like that, it's just not right. And I think some of these big companies have some very large chunks of that money, and I'd just love to see some sort of a change in attitudes.
Which company did you pick?
Which company? I kind of picked one of the big ones.
Oh, okay.
Someone with that kind of power and that sort of reach. I think their ability to influence the entire world is phenomenal. So I'd love to see something very altruistic spread that, if every one of their users like donated $1 to a valuable cause or something like that, you just see not only the money, but I think the change in attitudes and the goodwill of just kind of shifting mindset around giving and helping and engaging in line, as opposed to having these monopolies. I know they do give a lot and all those things, but I'd love to see them influence their users to kind of have that change individually.
Okay, yeah.
Might sound a bit esoteric, a bit altruistic. I just think they've got such influence. They can change the world, and they can do a lot with that kind of market position.
Well, we've all got to have dreams, right?
Yeah.
Or is that what you call hope marketing?
I think that's hope marketing.
Yeah.
Look,
but I mean, if you can imagine, like, let's say, if Google put like 5 cents of every dollar spent on an AdWord to, entrepreneurs in developing countries, like for microloans and all that kind of stuff, like that could just be phenomenal.
Absolutely.
Like that in itself is its own economy for some of the countries that need help.
Exactly. That's exactly the kind of thing I'm talking about. Just using that power, just in that influence, to really kind of just improve the quality of life for people who aren't as fortunate as we are in this kind of digital connected world.
Yeah, remote, unemotional too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just kidding. So we talked a lot about putting sort of the action behind the words and that sort of thing. So what would 3 specific actions, either about stuff that we've talked about or things that you'd like to consider, but what would you give our audience in terms of, hey, these are 3 things that you can do to really kind of master your next step? What would those be?
Great. Well, I'll keep it related to LinkedIn, because we've spoken a lot around LinkedIn. It's sort of where my head's at the moment. I think out of 3 specific actions, one of the first things, and this really applies online, it's to be your best authentic self. So obviously online and profiles and LinkedIn, you do want to put your best foot forward. You're not going to have your profile photo as playing Xbox in your underpants. You're gonna put your best authentic self out there. But I think trying to be someone that you're not, and trying to, all that stuff we see online, it doesn't work. It doesn't connect with people, and you're not going to get the quality of business and fans and interaction that you deserve.
Okay.
So that's one of the first things. I think, and the more that I'm myself online, the more I have fun in my email copy, the more I do something like a 50-cent infographic that,
are you saying be less formal, or just kind of have some fun?
I would say be authentic. If it's your style to have a bit of fun, then have some fun, and you're going to attract and resonate with people who like your style, and you're going to engage really well with them.
What if I'm way too serious?
Well, if you're way too serious, I think then great. You might start attracting some people who are way too serious and
All right.
think, damn it, this Doyle fellow is brilliant. Someone
my
finally
God.
someone speaking my language. So
Good.
I just think be authentic, and you're gonna enjoy what you're doing, but you're also going to connect with the right kind of customers and fans and people that you really like interacting with, and you share worldviews, you share common ideals. I think you're going to have a much better quality of business and life when you're being authentic, because the second you step out and try and pretend to be someone you're not, you're going to either not resonate with people, because our BS detectors now are just very, very finely tuned. We know when people aren't being real. We know when photos are fake, or if people are just, if they're showing they're out and about in Ferraris, it's not necessarily authentic. So
I guess I better remove that picture then.
yeah, well, I need to get one. But yeah. So it's just being authentic to who you are and who you are with your friends and your colleagues, and not switching modes online and pretending, that you're someone you're not.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
And then, so that applies pretty much across life and social media, but a specific LinkedIn thing, which just comes up time and time again when I'm consulting and doing strategy sessions, is really simple. And I'd love for anyone who's listening who's got a LinkedIn profile to do this, and I'm sure it's going to help them. It's the summary section on LinkedIn. That's the very first piece of text that people will see within your profile. So once they've got past your profile photo and your headline, and they're looking at your profile, it's called the summary section, which you can add in. And I like to think of this as kind of your 24/7 sales guy or gal. It's kind of your business development manager who's working around the clock. So it's a very good place to have a call to action. So if people are looking at your account, say, who's this Doyle fellow? What does he do? You don't want to leave them hanging and just where they go, oh, that's great, he's doing some cool stuff. You want to have a call to action to your target market and your target audience. And that might be, check out my podcast, join my list. It might just be connect with me on LinkedIn, but that's a really valuable little piece of real estate that people don't capitalize on. So my next action would be make sure you've got some kind of call to action in that summary that guides people to what you want them to do.
Okay. Excellent advice.
And the third one, again, was we hit on it a few times on this call. It's where I'm at because I've just been doing it myself, is recommendations on LinkedIn. Again, they're the one thing on your profile that you haven't written, and it's huge social proof. So, I've just played around. I just ran a little strategy, and I think we can give it away to people listening in the links. But basically, I came up with one of these mini campaigns we've been talking about. I looked at my profile, realized I didn't have enough recommendations, so I managed to boost it by about an extra 20 recommendations in a day or two.
Oh, excellent!
And so, just the difference in what the difference that has had for me in my business, I'd love for that for other people as well. It's just a very simple thing you can do.
Okay. Yeah, that's good social proof without question. Okay. Excellent. And being I guess a generous and good-looking guy, David, you had something special.
Glad this is an audio.
That's okay. We can all see your profile picture, so yeah.
Cool.
You wanted to basically help our audience along, and you had sort of a LinkedIn quiz or checklist or something you were going to provide?
Yeah, well, that actually it's the recommendation formula that I've been using.
Okay, excellent.
It's actually got the templates. So I've tested these templates to get the best results for people to take action.
Yeah.
And I've got a sneaky little hack in there as well. So instead of normally when you get a recommendation from someone, you have to go into LinkedIn and sort of hit please recommend me, and you get this very dry message sent out. Got a little hack that allows you to email all of your contacts at once with a hyperlink to your profile and a suggested template. So very quick, huge leverage, makes it easy for other people, and it's a very, very quick and kind of painless way to get a large number of recommendations.
Okay, excellent. And we'll have a link in our resources section, but what is the link you can direct people to?
Oh, I think you've caught me on that one.
Okay, well, I do have a shortened link here. That's okay.
It'll be that short link.
The Bitly link?
Yeah, I think the Bitly. Otherwise, it's this kind of crazy 50-character link. I think that's probably the best one.
Yeah, it's bit.ly/5 and then RECOS.
Yeah, and that was because
Recos.
Yeah, it was something I did with James around getting 5 recommendations in 5 days.
Ah, okay.
When
Excellent.
when we tested it on his account, I think he got about 12 in 24 hours. So
So did you beat him?
yeah, well, I came up with the strategy. So yeah, definitely. But I'm sure if he put some muscle behind it, he could beat me.
All right. That's okay. Cool. Well, anything else that you wanted to kind of give our audience as sage advice for online?
Sage advice for online. Look, I think we've covered a lot of it. I've hit a few of the same points. I just think definitely, I think people should be less afraid to be themselves.
Less afraid. That's a good one. Yeah. No, I like that.
And just any time that and definitely going back to the 50 graphic, if you're talking it, you got to walk it. So get out there, and the second you start implementing any of these things that we're talking about on this podcast or any of your other podcasts, you get instant feedback and instant learning. So an analogy would be, some people with exercise, they think, I'm going to go for 3 runs this week. I'm going to go 3 times, and that's what I'm going to do. And they suddenly think, that's what's going to happen. They're going to go out and do all of these things, and instead they do none of those things. And when it comes to this analogy, like online, it's better to go for 1 run a week than to dream of doing 3. So whatever it's
you
that
got to
first
get
step.
stuff done, really.
Definitely. And don't always focus on, I'm going to do this big thing. That's what you're going for, but it's still better to go for 1 run than to dream of doing 3. So, the faster you start shipping and testing, a guy called Ryan Holiday. Do you know, have you
Yes.
seen Ryan online? Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah, I've just finished his book, The Obstacle is the Way. Brilliant piece.
Brilliant piece. I got to go up to Sydney and catch up with him.
Oh, excellent.
Workshops last year, but he talks about the collective, memory of the internet. I think it's about 5 seconds.
Okay.
There's zillions of things coming through feeds. There's, don't be precious. Get out there. Unless it's something, unless you're a celebrity who gets their iPhone hacked, no one's going to remember. If you put out an ebook and it's crappy, you know what? You find out it's crappy and you fix it. You try a product and it doesn't work. You know what? You find out it doesn't work and you fix it. Everyone else is going to forget and move on. So I think it's get over yourself and just ship. Just whatever that first thing is, just do it quickly, find out and fix it, rather than dreaming of this perfect thing that's not going to happen to you.
No, absolutely. I agree 100%. And that's a big problem that I see too, is that people are expecting to have, 1,000 people on their email list and, 10,000 fans or, 5,000 Twitter followers. And it's like, well, look, you got to start with 1, right? Like worry about the first one first. And then you can sort of add more and, add a little bit more and get some more feedback and, change a few things and that sort of thing. You got to build this ecosystem from scratch, and it's not just going to happen. And you got to focus on the small steps up front, definitely, to get you there.
Absolutely. And I think one quote that ties in with that, it might be a Tony Robbins quote. Don't know where I've picked it up along the way. It was
probably my quote.
Probably your quote. The famous Doyle Buehler once said, success is moving forward. And I like that because we tie so many different things with success. But as long as you're moving forward, it doesn't matter how far that's a definition of success you can achieve every single day.
Yeah.
So I think success is moving forward. As long as you're not dreaming of that perfect thing that you're not doing, like you said, build that ecosystem. Start with nothing. Build it 1 at a day if you have to. But 1's better than none, and 2's better than 1. So just keep moving.
Yeah, exactly. So success is moving forward. brought to you by David Hobson and Doyle Buehler.
I'll be expecting an email from the Robbins Foundation, I think.
Yeah, really. Oh, that's okay. They don't know who you are.
Yeah.
Did 50 Cent ever actually get back to you, or did you contact him?
I was very, very close to contacting his team, and I regret that someone freaked me out the day before I was going to do it. I had an in with his public relations team to get onto them.
Yeah.
And someone sort of, after we'd put in all this hard work, they said, they basically strongly recommended that we didn't, and that we might get sort of shut down if someone in his team didn't like it or objected to it or thought we were trying to somehow make money from him, which we weren't. So I sort of very close to it, but again, I should have done it. I would have found out. I might have learned a tough lesson.
Well, maybe that would be the one too that you approach in advance. right?
Yeah,
To say,
yeah,
look, this is...
yeah.
So he wanted to keep his 50 cent then.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure, but I that's the problem. I didn't do it, so I'll never know, unfortunately.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, let's save that for number 2.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, thank you, David. I really appreciate your time and your insight and your ideas into online. And once again, thank you, David Hobson, and really appreciate you coming to join me for this podcast. And for all the listeners out there, you can get get the download and find out some of the resources that we talked about at thedigitaldelusion.com/podcast. That's all I got for today. So thank you, and we will see you online.
Thank you for listening to Breaking Online with Doyle Buehler. While he goes and makes a sandwich, you can find all the notes, links, and details of this podcast by visiting thedigitaldelusion.com/2.
Go on and click that now. www.thedigitaldelusion.com/2.
I'll definitely click that. If you'd like a free copy of the book, The Digital Delusion by Doyle Buehler,
Just email Doyle at thedigitaldelusion.com.